All right, we are back after, I want to say, 12, 13 weeks. We're back in this shit show. So, I should probably get more shit uh, situated. But for just introduce, like, this is episode 46 of MRT. Uh, you should want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yep. Sheer Iceman, 2MD, the guy who's trying to basically put together some Milsim servers, despite Dice's best efforts to not give us anything to do that with. Uh, they're being a pain in the ass.
uh, so I'm just going to start with right from the get go. Where did you get like started on this? Like before making maps and all that shit. What brought you into Milsim?
Honestly, when I was in college, I was pretty much just kind of bored after class one day. I was like, it's not a whole lot of games. I was like playing Fallout 76 at the time. That game didn't really have anything. I was playing with like a role play group, and I was like, okay, this game is not giving us what we need to make this thing work. I'm gonna go play Battlefield. And then I went on looking for group posts and basically found a Battlefield Milsim. The time it was 40th Infantry Division on Battlefield 4. I think this was back in, what was it, 2021, give or take.
Was
So
that back
kind
in
of
BF5?
Well, Battlefield 5 was out, but I wasn't a big fan of Battlefield 5 because I'm mostly an air guy, and just for one reason or another, I wasn't as big on that game because of some of the like historical stuff that they were kind of doing that I wasn't a fan of. And then I didn't really love the flight model of some of the planes because I'm mostly a helicopter guy. So like there wasn't really that much for me in Battlefield 5 because there's no choppers. So I kind of wasn't really looking at Battlefield 5 for Milsim stuff, so I was kind of looking around Battlefield 4, and yeah, I ended up in 40 ID at that point. So then, more or less, kind of been running with the same kind of core group of people. 40 ID kind of split, ended up 2 Meb, and then that group of people has kind of more or less been who I've been sticking with since effectively since then. So
Right. From 40th ID, uh, where I heard that right, 40 ID.
yeah, back in like 21.
Okay, like from there up until now, like what have you all you been doing?
I mean, like, what do you mean? Like in Milsim, personally? Like,
Just Milsim in general.
I mean, play Battlefield 4 for a fat minute. Um, we all know what happened with 2042. We kind of did a stint on DayZ for a little bit. I did some work on like the map editor on DayZ, which is actually not terribly far off from kind of what DICE gave us, where like you can kind of just put new stuff on the map, but you can't really take stuff that's already there out. So that was, I think, my first kind of foray into like map editing, as it were.
What
So
was it like a difficult process to learn, or
for DayZ, not really. You kind of just had to have a computer, download the game on PC, and then it's basically like place soda can here, and you just like drag it, and you can kind of just move it up and down, left or right, and rotate it. So it's not really difficult. I think it's just you have to have a computer, and most of the people who are playing DayZ on console, if they had a computer, most of them just would have went to PC. So I was just doing that out of my gaming laptop at the time.
I was talking on mute?
So,
So was this like just something to do, killing time?
kind of. I mean, we were having fun playing DayZ. You know, it kind of more of a infantry based experience instead of like combined arms. You have weather, different outfits that make you warmer or colder. You have like thirst, disease, all of that. So it was a different experience. It's kind of nice in the interim, while we were kind of just waiting on like another battlefield to come out or like Reforger to come out and be in a good place because most of the people we kind of play with are on console.
Right.
So as far as Milsim goes, not as many options on console, and especially in the early days of Reforger when none of the mods were really out, like wasn't really as much there.
Yeah, I had experience with her Forger. Just you always trying to find a mod that, or mod or a group of mods that don't really crash your server every time you try to use them. Because there will be instances you'll be in the middle of doing something and the whole thing just crashes.
Yeah, and you found out that it's just like, oh yeah, this one vest in this one mod doesn't like this weird thing they used to make the chopper work in this other mod. It's like, why?
But garnering your experience from building shit from on Daisy to bringing over um, that experience to the Battlefield 6 community, is it easier or is it more of a pain in the ass compared to how you used to do things?
Well, I mean, it's kind of very different just because it's more of a who is it for kind of a thing, right? Because for Daisy, it was pretty much like the way they did it is they're like, okay, well, if you want to have like your own custom coded base, just send us the map file. We'll put it in the server. Everything's good to go. So, like, A, the only critics, and B, the only people it really would benefit would be your own group versus kind of the Milsim community at this point. There's always a vocal minority that's not happy, and it's kind of figuring out is that feedback just they're not happy for the sake of not being happy? Is stuff broken? Is it stuff I can even fix? Because for a lot of it, it's a weird point of, is this something that DICE just doesn't have working in the game? Is it something wrong with like the back end stuff that we set up to make it work the way we want it to do? And then finding the free time to actually look into and fix that stuff is kind of the main struggle. So it's just a free time thing at its core for like the map making.
Right. Like, uh, what's like all the uh, out of all the maps, what's the one that's most requested for you guys to work on?
Well, it's kind of weird because a lot of them are like asking for maps from like other games, and we'll probably get those once Dice lets us actually like move around terrain and stuff. Like you can't really make Caspian Border on any map because a lot of it's just the hills and grass and like rocks that kind of made up that map because there's not a lot of buildings. Currently, where the level editor's at is basically, we can place buildings so like, we can't really make a map like that, but somebody, and I'm still trying to get him to give me the file for it, but they've basically one-to-one remade Grand Bazaar from Battlefield 3. And it looks freaking killer. They got it on Siege of Cairo's like backdrop. So like a map like that, you can make pretty easily. Well, not to say easy, but you have the stuff now to be able to make it. But like things like you know, uh, Zavad, where it's like a bunch of trees and some like woods, or like what's some of the other ones from Battlefield 4 people really liked, like Dragon Valley, right? Like a lot of the ones that
Oh,
have very heavy landscape on the maps, those ones we can't really do. But like kind of the urban ones where it's just a bunch of buildings,
like
yeah,
something like Metro.
yeah. I mean, the main thing is like it's one thing, like you could make it, but is it something people are going to want to see if it's just a bunch of concrete walls? They're just like this off gray, or do you kind of wait to see if Dice can make it a little bit more nice looking before you kind of take the time to build it and then push it out? My main thing has pretty much been trying to get the like core actual settings behind this stuff where they need to go, and then like if somebody in the Battlefield Portal Discord like makes a cool map, like what I did with the Gulf of Linden map that was made by a guy named Kurt. I was like, hey, that's a cool map. Can I get a copy of the file? And he just sent me the file. So a lot of the people in that Discord are pretty cool about that. They're pretty much just like, hey, put it in the description that I worked on it and go for it.
For sure. Has someone tried to like request, or has someone tried to remake Metro, or what was the other one
I
that's in the
think
mountains?
somebody's working on it. I asked for the map file, never got a response. A lot of the things that some of the map makers are running into is that DICE basically has a very low limit on how much information you can like put in a file, right? So like for instance that Blood Gulch map that I like posted, if I like put one more vehicle spawner in, it basically is like, hey, this is like too big for you to attach onto this map, which makes no sense because it's just a bunch of rocks and some concrete, but there's a lot of things that they do that just don't make a lot of sense to us, but just might be like, the studio heads saying, well, we're not gonna fund this much like memory behind Portal because not enough people play it, and you could then argue, well, not enough people play it because you're not giving us enough tools, and it
Right.
kind of goes on and on.
So,
Because like from Dice's standpoint, they're not really monetizing Portal, so like Portal's not really gonna make them more money the way they have it set up right now. Other than like, maybe some people stop by the store on their way looking for a Portal server, but they kind of gutted the XP behind a lot of it. And then, if you overdo the XP, everybody just joins to shoot at bots and level up and then never play it again. And then those servers stop other people who want to do cool shit from being able to get a server up to run their games. So it's kind of a tricky situation on that end.
when you're making uh, when you're making a map on Portal Dookie, you changed my mind. I got Nether on here. Um, what's the
I
most
mean, I can
paying?
show you what it looks like if you want me to share the screen.
For sure. Like besides the size of the fucking
So like this is Manhattan, for instance. So like this is what I see when I'm like looking at stuff and trying to figure it out. So there's like the map file where you mess around with things on the map, and then there's the like back end like code of it where you're basically kind of telling it how with all of this what that means to it, and you're basically referencing things on that big map file with all of these back end code things.
oh shit, hang
So it's
on.
like a lot of times, oh, go ahead.
fucking Streamlabs fucking okay.
But basically like I don't think people realize just the amount of code that actually went into just the scoreboard, which is this right here that we had to figure out in the first kind of 2 weeks of like actually setting it up, and then like this just puts the scoreboard together, and then there's some stuff like down here somewhere that like updates it, when you get like a kill or something, and like all that
God,
stuff. So it's like the combination of that and then the placed objects like on the maps. I mean, the biggest thing that people are kind of like saying, I think the biggest things right now that they're like these are broken is like the borders between like the air vehicles, the spawns, and then like the normal out of bounds. It's like technically speaking, if everything that DICE gave us was working in here, they have this thing called surrounding combat area that technically we would be able to say, well, this area is out of bounds for this team and this place is out of bounds for this team. And then normally, that would be great and that would work fine, but that whole thing just doesn't work. They just launched it broken. So we basically had to do a huge slough of like random rules and like logic for it to basically say, well, this spawns out of bounds and this is when it isn't and all that crap. Yeah, it's like right here.
god damn.
So This whole thing is just supposed to be setting up the spawn protection,
Like I know one thing
and
that people
yeah,
were complaining about was just it was so easy to get spawn trapped and pretty much fucked over as soon as you spawn in.
yeah, and like for on our end for the maps, like when I was initially setting them all up, I basically said, okay, well, the default it seems like the maps came with was like 4 spawns for each side, so I put 4 in, and then 4 per each side on an objective. And then if you want to switch teams, you just run up to this target here and interact with it.
And it'll
But
switch teams.
yeah, but basically the function that like kind of it tells the game on the back end, if I can find it, is basically if you're on team one and you interact with the point that has like this number tied to it, then send them to the other team. But these two things used to be one rule, and I think what happened is a ton of people were hitting the buttons at the same time, and then it was basically saying, well, I'm supposed to do this for event player, but all of them are the event player, so I'm just gonna unspawn them and then it'll work or it
What
won't.
the fuck?
I think it was getting confused. Like a lot of the stuff that breaks is so unintuitive that like it takes a while to find because the way I had the code spelled out for it, because I think I still have an older copy of it up on another monitor of mine. But like the way it was set up was basically, let me scroll to it. It's like if they're on team one, move them to team two if they click this point. And then for some reason the game was messing that up. And I was like, I don't really know how I can get more clear than if you're on the US, move to the Russian team if you click this button. And if you're on the Russian team, move to the US. But I think that it just didn't like that phrasing, so I had to kind of change it. Yeah, here's the old version of it. Basically saying, if they're hitting this button or this button, unspawn them, and then if they're on the US side, move them to the Russian side, and then, make sure it doesn't drop a ticket. And then the same thing, but just other teams. So the game just doesn't work sometimes, and there's not really a good reason why. And then we have to figure out in our spare time, hey, what's the workaround and like, does it make sense?
Right.
Because like one of the funniest bugs that I found with it is when we were like tracking kills on the scoreboard. One of the earlier bugs was basically when you killed yourself, it was giving you a kill and a death because the game's logic was saying, well, you died, but you also killed the guy that just died, so we're gonna give you a kill.
You killed yourself, but you also died.
So like we had to, where is it? There was a thing we had in here for tracking kills, but it was basically like, adding in that thing of, well, if as long as you're not the other player that was killed, then we're not going to count it. It was stupid, but it made me laugh.
Now, is it just you that's doing this, or is there like a whole team?
So for like updating a lot of the vanilla maps, I've been doing most of that work. One of the guys in USM, he goes by either Thirsty or Black People. It's been one or the other. I can't remember what it's currently. But he's basically, yeah, he's currently going by Black People in the Discord. But like, he helps with some of the stuff, but kind of the problem with it is that all of these files get stored locally on a computer. So like we'd have to send it to Google Drive anytime we made an update. He's been leaning more into like the custom map side of it, whereas I've been trying to kind of get the base code behind all of these maps kind of stable. And currently the community's not really doing as much with custom maps on like an official capacity. I think there's been a JTO or two on like Metal Storm, which is just it's effectively just Firestorm, but you know, twice the assets on each side, and then like larger
Um,
boundaries.
wasn't that the one that was always crashing?
I don't think that one was crashing a lot. I mean, basically you can blow the boundaries way out on these maps to where, you can have like the mountains over here in Firestorm and the ones behind the US spawn. So like, and what's weird too with it is if you want them to actually be spawning, like respawning vehicles, you have to put these weird spears that are just like vehicle spawners. So like for instance, this one, I'm telling the game, hey, this one's an Abrams, it's gonna spawn automatically, and then if it dies, the respawn time is 100. We just put 100 for all the vehicles because it seems the most even way to do it. Because if you don't put a respawn time in and you leave it blank, if that thing blows up where it spawns, it'll spawn inside its own debris and then blow up, and effectively you just have this continuous explosion, and you just can't really use that. And it, ironically, the server seems to handle that fine, but I mean, you've got a giant exploding vehicle consistently on one-shot settings, and you're not gonna get this vehicle. So, but yeah.
So a lot of the guys are just going back to fighting
Well,
on
I
actual
think a
maps
lot of the
less than
people,
co-op.
when they find something broken, like we set up a channel for it, and it was, I mean, I can find it, but it's basically the like the server bug report or something. Slayer like just moved everything around, so I gotta like re-find it.
I
But
never understood that.
uh, my test. Where did that channel go? Trying to find it. Yeah, I'm like not finding that right now. I think he just combined it all into bug reports. But like, we get weird bugs like this where the spawn boundaries like do this weird thing where they like maybe don't remove it when you like die or something. And then there's just this weird box on it, which is something that I'm trying to fix this next map update that I'm trying to push around. I finally just got a bunch of free time because my work cooled down, but I was basically working 65 hours, and then I'm married, so my wife after outside of work kind of takes priority, and then
Right.
after that there's that small subsection of time where it's like, you know, I'm in a unit, so I'm going to be active in that unit, fix this stuff where I can, but just my time was a lot more squished, so
Right.
wasn't as much I could do the last month. So,
That's pretty interesting, actually.
but yeah, where did it go? Like the guy who made the aircraft carrier for this map that I think
Was
most people are kind of on board with.
the
If
one
you're
where it's like
curious
the
on
high?
how,
It's a highway on top of a random ass like boat.
yeah, it's literally just a bunch of highways on top of a bunch of concrete walls that he made into the shape of an aircraft carrier,
That just
which I
that
think is
that
pretty
just
cool.
looks silly.
Yeah, but we had no maps with an aircraft carrier, and then Dice gave us this map that has a giant ocean in it, and they were like, well, let's put an aircraft carrier on it because
Isn't
we
that
liked
in an
that from like
upcoming?
Battlefield 3 stuff.
Isn't that what like an upcoming update? There's gonna be like one of the maps has like a carrier or some shit on it.
So the weird thing is that Dice hasn't given us any kind of roadmap other than just vaguely saying we know you missed the little bird and you should expect to see it pretty soon. And we've heard calls for like platoons and naval warfare, and we're listening to you. That's basically all that they've officially said on it. The jet ski's been data mined for season 3, which I think is probably going to be in like April. So
We're
like
still on season
I
one.
Yeah, and they're not giving us the roadmap or, season 2, at least what that's even going to be until January based on what they've published. So at this point, kind of all we have to go off of is like those two vague statements that they did, and then like data mines and leaks, which are, sometimes they're reliable, sometimes there aren't. So it's kind of like we were probably going to get some carriers at some point. I saw a meme on I forget where it was. I think it was in one of the discords, but it was kind of like what I want for naval warfare for Battlefield 6, and it was like a screenshot from Battlefield 4 and then it's like what we're probably gonna get, and it was just an aircraft carrier with three objectives on it, and then the two ends of it were the spawns. And I was like, I hate how close to home that hits, because like compared to some of the other maps, I don't know if you've kind of seen the comparisons that people have done on like the map sizes compared to previous games, but these maps objectively are a lot smaller compared to like Battlefield 3, 4, 2042 especially, but those maps were probably too big.
Yeah, I mean, there was what was it Firestorm, Dragon Valley, Caspian. Um, there's there's all-time range. What's that one with like you could get the railgun on it?
Yeah, like
I forgot
I
the.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, those were like
Yeah,
pretty big ass maps. Our Parasol Storm, that's another big one.
here's what it was. Yeah, this is like based on the square footage for all of the maps
God
compared to some of the other ones.
damn.
So like this in the middle is Battlefield 6's maps. You know, the biggest one we've got is like Firestorm and Merak Valley. Then you compare that to like Battlefield 3, right? Bandar Desert, um, Alborz Mountains, like Firestorm here, Karg Island. You know, these maps are huge. Battlefield 4, you know, you had Goldmond, Silk Road,
Oh yeah,
Paracel
I
Storm,
forgot about those.
Dragon Valley. Like all of these objectively are a lot bigger than what we have even at the biggest maps for Battlefield 6.
Right.
So like that's kind of what people are saying when they're like we miss the big maps. Like they're not just making that up. Like we genuinely don't have a lot of large maps compared to what we've gotten in the past. Like, you know, especially looking at some of the bigger ones from Battlefield 4.
Yeah.
Cuz like based on the square footage, I mean, most of these maps are more or less kind of comparable to the size of like Sunken Dragon or Dawnbreaker, or maybe like kind of some of those mid-level ones like Zavad.
Yeah.
Zavad looks like it's more or less the same size as Blackwell Fields, or pretty
I feel like
close, which is kind of weird to think about.
I feel like
'Cause there's
fucking
jets on Blackwell.
yeah, like Battlefield 4 seemed like to have more bigger maps than it does smaller maps because there was like what less than five small maps compared to the entirety of um, BF4 from to launch to like the final DLC.
Yeah, and
Everything
I'll
else is
give the fair
huge.
comparison though too that, you know, we're obviously in the early stages of 6 and we can compare it to Battlefield 4 by the end of its life cycle, but Goldmond, Paracel, um, and like a lot of these were launch maps that are these huge maps. So it's not like they didn't have these right away.
All right,
Right?
well, shit. Go ahead.
Like even Operation Outbreak, right? The like Vietnam one is more or less the same size as Marak Valley.
Right.
It's 0.03 square kilometers of difference there.
See, I wouldn't mind if they did if they were gonna do like another big map, do like that the military base or the Pax Armada base you attack in like the
Oh
last
yeah,
mission.
from the campaign.
Yeah. So you could get something like that. That's a big ass map in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly kind of one of my thoughts for a lot of this stuff was what shortcuts are they going to take to save development time? Because at the end of the day, you know, they're going to try to save development time where they can. So in my mind, that's like, well, what stuff from the campaign are they going to try to reuse so that they don't have to like completely start from scratch? And some of the things that kind of come to mind are like, you know, that base, like you said, maybe releasing a night variant of Cairo because that one mission was nighttime Cairo,
Right.
if you remember that one.
Yeah, I
Another
actually
thing
just
that I
beat the fucking campaign today.
another thing that I kind of thought about with it is like, you know, a lot of the Marine units are like, we want our Marpad. Why is there no Marpad in the game? And like you know that they saw how much that Ranger pack probably sold. So like the fact that they haven't released it in the store tells me that they probably are planning on releasing it as part of like a battle pass would be my best guess. Because I mean, otherwise, why wouldn't they just release something that they already coded in the game? Like you have the NPCs wearing Marpat in the first mission. It looks pretty good. You know, they could just make some quick cash off of it. But if they're planning on having it as live service content, then that makes sense.
Be like the fucking era bundle, like BF3 era, BF4 eras, like has a bunch of camos, weapon skins,
Yeah, I
dog
mean,
tags, all that shit.
like there was probably a very good amount of people that went and played 2042 that last month before Battlefield 6 just because they were going to give them like the engineer skin from Battlefield 4 in Battlefield 6 on the packs, or I think it was the pack side, one of the sides. And then like this knockoff Marpat looking guy at the end of the battle pass. So most of the people I know who did it, they basically just sat in bot servers and AFK'd. Like I just had a flight stick and just like turned one of the dials up and it just spun my guy in a circle all night every night.
Wait, so it was just
No work on my end.
was it pretty much just like, you get all this for spending X amount of time in a server?
Well, it was basically it was the last thing in that the last battle pass they did for 2042. So like 2042, they didn't have as hard of caps on like XP gain in Portal. So a lot of people would set up these game modes where it would just teleport you to an objective until it captured and then teleport you to the next one and just do that for hours. And you'd get all these ribbons and stuff and it would pile up and you get like 30,000 XP in 20 minutes.
Fuck.
So like people would just sit in those all night. But those servers are why a lot of times you'll run into issues where they're like no available servers. It's because Dice only owns so many servers that they're like dedicating to Portal, and then people are just setting up bot servers with them.
Right. Shit, man. Time could tell if they gotta improve this shit or not, but
I mean, I wouldn't even be upset if they basically said, "Hey, we'll let you buy a server with a couple extra perks on it if you don't," and it guarantees that you'll always have it, and like you'll get to use it for different things. Like one of the things that I really don't really understand that they did is they basically said, if you're gonna make a new experience, if you have Battlefield Pro, they're like you can host a 100 player Portal server, but the only way you can do that is by making it a battle royale, and then you need 50 people to start. So really, it's just a whole bunch of nothing
yeah,
because
it's like
nobody
by
gets 50 players ready to start that just wait around that long.
yeah, it's like
And one of the main reasons that for Milsim we're not just doing like a base conquest is because if we did that, right, there's no way for me to say, okay, unlimited game time, it's capped at an hour. There's no way for me to set up the team switching thing that I did because you can't use the logic editor that lets us use all this back end code to like fix some of the stuff that they left broken. So like I couldn't set up these team switcher things on the maps. So for Milsim, we would just effectively have, you know, no ability to switch teams, no ability to leave no time limits, and you wouldn't really be able to do anything. So we had to recode all of Conquest through all of the back end logic so that we could get something semi functional for what we wanted to do with it. Because you don't need players on the server to start it on custom games.
right.
So just got a ton of like just stuff in here.
Oh, all right. Well, go ahead and call it for today. I figured I'd do one stream before Christmas. Is there anything else you want to say before we take off for our night?
I mean, I'm just hoping I can actually push out the update that fixes these map boundaries because that's kind of the biggest thing. And then I'm working with a guy to try to make it to where the AT4 doesn't have a wire guided mode. And the idea there is basically when you shoot it, the game's just going to auto switch your weapon so that by the time you can even pull it back out, it should have already hit.
Right.
But other than that, Merry Christmas, everyone.
All right, folks. Well, everyone who misses this stream, we'll be up on YouTube tonight. Um, apologies for the hiatus, but shit happens, and we'll just leave it at that. But we'll see y'all in the next one.